By the 21st of March 2026, the conflict had spread beyond missile exchanges over the Middle East. It was becoming a test of U.S. and allied missile defense capacity, the resilience of global markets against another energy shock, and Washington's ability to carry the political burden of a prolonged war ahead of the 2026 midterms. The pressure was no longer confined to the battlefield. It was also building in stockpiles, markets, and politics. The Strait of Hormuz remains the clearest symbol of that risk. The U.S. Energy Information Administration says roughly 20 million barrels of oil per day moved through the strait in 2024, equal to about 20% of global petroleum liquids consumption, with around one-fifth of global LNG trade also passing through it. That means every missile launch, tanker warning, or airspace disruption now carries consequences far beyond the Gulf. The first pressure point is munitions. Modern war looks fast on screen, but it moves slowly in factories. A Patriot interceptor is not just a missile, it is guidance hardware, electronics, propulsion, software, skilled labor, and a supplier chain that cannot be expanded overnight. Even wealthy states do not produce these systems in unlimited numbers. In January, Lockheed Martin delivered 620 PAC-3 interceptors in 2025 and is now working to raise annual capacity to 2,000 from roughly 600. Demand is already intense, and the expansion plan itself shows how limited production remains. Factories cannot simply triple output overnight. The same logic applies to THAAD and other high-end defenses. Reuters reported in 2024 that a single THAAD battery typically uses 6 launchers and requires about 100 troops to operate. These are not plug-and-play systems that can be duplicated at will. They are scarce, specialized assets, and once a conflict begins stretching across multiple fronts, every redeployment becomes a strategic choice. That is why low-cost drones are so dangerous. They are cheap enough to trigger an expensive response. Repeated waves of cheaper drones and missiles can strain air defenses, burn through interceptors, and gradually alter the economics of the war. Over time, the conflict is defined not only by firepower, but by how fast each side can replace what it uses. The second pressure point is markets. Investors react faster than governments, and supply chains move faster than military briefings. This week, Iraq declared force majeure on foreign-operated oil fields after disruption around Hormuz, with southern output falling from 3.3 million barrels per day to 900,000 barrels per day for domestic refinery use. The economic shock is already visible in hard numbers. The market effect does not stop at crude. The war is disrupting pharmaceutical air routes, with Dubai and Doha hit as cargo hubs, and some hospitals warned they could face pressure within weeks if the disruption continues. One executive told Reuters, "If you have an urgent surgery with a patient waiting for treatment, you have to choose the faster mode of transport. The disruption in airspace is now affecting more than aviation. Medical supply lines are also coming under pressure. Then there is shipping insurance, one of the clearest signs that private capital has already repriced the risk." Reuters reported that Chubb has launched a special war risk insurance facility for ships moving through Hormuz, where about 20% of the world's oil supply passes. Once insurers begin redesigning coverage for a war zone, you are already far beyond a temporary market scare. Reuters has reported that drone strikes damaged Amazon Web Services data centers in the UAE and Bahrain, disrupting cloud services used by banks and companies across the region. The war is broadening what counts as strategic infrastructure. The pressure is no longer focused only on energy facilities. Ports, logistics hubs, and data centers are also being drawn into the conflict. The third pressure point is politics. Wars do not wait for elections, but democracies still have to pass through them on schedule. In the United States, every member of the House serves a 2-year term. The number of voting House seats is fixed at 435, and approximately 1/3 of the Senate faces election every 2 years. The next general election falls in November 2026. If this conflict is still shaping inflation, fuel prices, freight costs, or market sentiment by then, it will not remain a foreign policy question. It will become a domestic political liability. Iran does not need a clean battlefield victory to impose costs. It only needs to keep pressure on the three systems that matter most over time: weapons supply, market stability, and political patience. That does not mean Tehran is winning. It means the conflict can become harder for Washington to sustain even without a dramatic military reversal. There are already signs of that wider pressure. Reuters reported that European stocks logged a third straight weekly loss as the war fueled inflation fears, while Wall Street also fell on concern that higher energy prices could delay or even reverse hopes for easier monetary policy. This is how a regional war starts writing itself into consumer prices, rate expectations, and election messaging thousands of miles away. So, the real question tonight is not simply who can strike harder tomorrow morning. It is who can keep paying for this conflict, militarily, economically, and politically, one week after another. The original script you sent is right about that central idea. Modern wars are not decided only by the exchange of fire. They are decided by whether factories can replace what is fired, whether markets can tolerate the shock, and whether elected governments can survive the cost. For now, the battlefield is still active, but the deeper contest is already underway. The missiles matter, the interceptors matter, the tankers, cargo hubs, insurers, and voters matter too. And if this war continues to move from launch sites to stockpiles, from stockpiles to markets, and from markets to politics, then the final outcome may be shaped as much in boardrooms and ballot boxes as it is in the sky over the Gulf.